Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez, here with
Doug.
You sound so excited for this one. And you are listening to episode number 61. Do you remember what it is off the top of your head?
Fuck no. I'm sorry, dude.
Episode number 615. It's okay. I have to go back and check it every now and then myself because a lot of things get jumbled. On this episode, we talk about Batman, more specifically, BatmanGate, a story from last year, which we never got to cover because we weren't recording, but we figured, hey, why not? Some information came up, and I heard about some news sources, and I figured, why not? Let's revisit an old story and see what happens, and we'll try to follow it as it plays out in the next few months, or maybe even year. Who knows? Lawsuits take a long time. And then from there, we delve into a bunch of other stories regarding Batman, Spawn, Deadpool 3, Marvel, DC, comics in general. So we just jump around here and there. And then, what are some of the other ones? Twisted Metal. We're all over the place.
Twisted Metal, Borderlands. Yeah, we were covered a good amount of ground, I think.
Yeah, and so there's a lot to listen to in these nice compact episode, so we hope you enjoy. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. You can also find the show over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Rabblecast. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast. Check out the Facebook fan page and email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. If you want to send any weird pictures or stories, Doug, do you want to give your email?
No, you can just, if you have anything weird to send, just go to, hey, it's Doug13 on Twitter.
Okay. Be prepared for some weird shit.
Well, I'm giving out my weird Twitter. I'm not giving out my secret Twitter.
Ah, fair enough. Okay. That's a good way to go. With that being said, I think we're done. Are you happy?
Happy as a clam.
Okay. Let's get into it. Enjoy the show.
Woo! That's why it was called a puppet.
I love that story. How are you, sir? How you doing?
Ups and downs, ins and outs, life in the fast lane, insert any other stupid ass fucking saying you can imagine here. How are you?
Hanging in there. I am tired. Truth be told, right before I sat down, I was looking up some information on an old news story that I came about, and out of nowhere, I conked out. I pulled what I like to refer to a Jimmy, where I just passed out without even realizing it, and then oh shit, time passed.
I've been there before, man. I've been desperately trying to catch up on the last drive-in this past week, and I have fallen asleep for every single episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, we're getting old.
Yeah, I'm not too happy about that, but what the fuck are you gonna do?
I even tried. What's that?
No, I was gonna say at least I can rewind my shit and just play it. So.
Fair enough. I even tried drinking a energy drink as soon as I got home. We had a full day today. Like I had to go pick up my niece and nephew from their summer school programs. Came home. I had to take the oldest to his karate class. Jen wasn't feeling great. We were running around afterwards, getting some stuff done. And then finally, when I got home, I had to try to eat something because I haven't eaten all day pretty much. And like I said, out of nowhere, I guess just from the comfort of eating something, my body goes, food, take a nap. It's like, damn it. All right, that's not what I wanted. But I was able to get everything else. Jen helped me get the kids situated, and I got set up, and I was able to give you a call. And here we are now. So after that fantastic story. But I want to take a trip back. This came up a while ago. Let's see. This was from a story of, funny enough, July 2022.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the...
Ago?
What's that?
About a year ago.
Yes. Are you familiar with the movie The Batman?
Are you talking about the one with Twilight?
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
Have you watched The Batman?
I watched it once sometime in the spring of 2022, not long after it came out on HBO Max. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll be perfectly honest with you, I remember very fucking little from it.
That's fine. You really don't need to remember much to follow this story, only because some time ago I came across a link. This is when I was not recording, so there was no coverage from this show whatsoever. There was a story where a gentleman by the name of Chris Wozniak,
Okay.
former writer and artist for DC Comics, was writing his own material after he left DC and doing his own thing. Was approached at a New York Comic Con by somebody by the name, I believe, was Michael Uslan. And the gentleman walked up and says, "Hey, I like the title of your book, and I'm very interested. I'm a movie producer. I'm always looking for story ideas." So Chris Wozniak apparently handed over a book, and Mr. Uslan then handed over a business card with his information and his contact on it. Later on, Mr. Wozniak went to go look up who Mr. Uslan was because he had no clue. He just said, "Oh, somebody at New York Comic Con likes my stuff. Okay, cool. Producer. Let's see what happens."
Yeah.
Types it into the old Google machine. Turns out Mr. Uslan is the producer of all Batman movies.
Okay.
All right, not a bad idea. Okay, so at that point, Mr. Wozniak decides, hey, he said he's looking for story ideas. Let me send him a script for an unused Batman story that I did back in the day and see what he thinks of it. He sends it out. Nothing happens. Now, he has some contact with a few other gentlemen in the DC Comics area and also Warner Brothers, especially at this point because we're talking about movies. But nothing really happens as far as any follow-up. He thinks, okay, no big deal. So it's like years go by and nothing really is happening. The Batman comes out in the theaters. I believe it was last year, correct? Last year, sometime in the spring, I want to say it came out.
I want to say March 2022 is sticking out in my head, and I think that was one of the dual releases where it was in theaters and on HBO Max at the same time.
I think this one actually had a delay because that was near the end of the day and date releases for Warner Brothers.
Okay.
Because I remember going to this one. I remember going to the theaters and watching it, and then when I tried showing it to Jen later on when it came out on streaming, she was just looking at me like, I can't stay up for this. This is too long. For anybody who has not watched The Batman, it's a long movie. It's almost a 3-hour long movie.
Yeah.
So I can understand for anybody who can't get through in just one sitting. Thankfully, it's on streaming at this point, so you can watch it at your own pace in chunks at that point. But to get back to the story itself, Mr. Wozniak did not watch the movie in the theater. Mr. Wozniak waited until it came home to HBO Max, and that was in June of 2022. And the reason for this is because he says he did not want to have any of the story points spoiled for him. Like any person who likes watching a movie, you want to be surprised when you go into the theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was surprised when he found out that the storyline and the beat per beat action of what was on the screen matched the unused story for Batman that he sent to Mr. Uslan. At which point, he goes, shit, something's not right here. He then reached out to a couple of different people. It became a story online. Like I said, at the time, I wasn't really recording, so this was referred to as BatmanGate, because everything, with the gate has to be mentioned.
Of course.
And he started getting some backing for it. And at this point, I don't know exactly where it lands now, but apparently it is something that's been going on for quite some time, that at the very least it prompted some activity in some of the social media that I follow. More specifically, the link that I shared, somebody posted about it and somebody tagged somebody else in it. So I figured, okay, let me see if I can find some information. I reached out to a few different people and come to find out that the legal battle between Mr. Wozniak, is still ongoing. He's tried reaching out to different people, Mr. Uslan specifically, and Warner Brothers. I said, hey, look, this is my story. You guys used it. I know, was it Matt Reeves was the director for The Batman. He said it was not a previous Batman story that had been written, he would be correct in that respect if this is the case, and said this is a mostly original story. Well, mostly original because it was written by Mr. Wozniak, apparently. Nothing really happened. He was hoping it was going to get taken care of, I guess you can say settled before it had to become a court case or anything of that such. But again, it dragged on. He started a change.org link or like a GoFundMe, or that was an Indiegogo, I believe. And he was raising funds because he knew he had a battle on his hand at that point. So as of right now, from the people that I have heard from, it's been said that the case is ongoing. It looks pretty darn good for Mr. Wozniak, because I don't think Warner Brothers was expecting it to go this far, and for him to, I guess, be able to put up enough money to go against their team of lawyers. But this story might have some legs to it still and might get some kind of resolution. Imagine trying to write a Batman story saying, oh, I'm going to use this as a comic book. Then turn it around and say, oh, no, this might be a good, screenplay. Try to submit it, nothing happens, but suddenly you find it on the big screen, and then you're like, what the fuck? There's a video that they posted up last year sometime. I can't remember the exact posting date. I'll try to share some of these videos on the Facebook fan page and on Twitter, where Mr. Uslan actually talks about what he does as far as finding story ideas and turning them into scripts or movies, blockbuster films. And that's that he'll find a book, a story, whatever the case is, a comic maybe, and then he'll use that as a blueprint, and then they'll build it out to incorporate actors and other writers, and they'll build upon that to try to build this centerpiece, and the centerpiece being the film itself. And then from there, using that and then saying, here, this is what we're going to shoot. This is going to be the next story, in this case, Batman. The videos and the interviews do them no favor when it comes to the story. And Mr. Wozniak looks like he might have a very, very good case against the producers of the film and Warner Brothers Discovery at this point if they don't settle beforehand. I can only imagine what the kind of payout would be nowadays for a big blockbuster film, because I believe, it says here, the movie grossed over $770 million globally.
Wow. Okay.
So a nice chunk of change of that would be going to him if it's proven that it is indeed his. If you check out the videos, which I was trying to review because I watched them last year, I was trying to get the rundown of them again just to get a better understanding of the story overall. If you go the point-by-point story beats, you can see where his original idea, his original unused script matches up with the movie with only very, very few change-ups. And the change-ups that were made were done because they went from the regular Batman story that was originally written to a young, in this case, year 2 Batman, to show him starting out. More specifically, there was a scene where, I know you say you don't recall it, so for you and for the listeners, there's the one scene where Batman solves a riddle, and it's essentially saying that there's going to be a firebomb sent to the Wayne Manor. Mm-hmm. Alfred ends up opening it, the firebomb goes off, he then ends up going to the hospital. Well, but Batman gets the warning when he solves the riddle. He tries calling home, only for somebody to tell him, "Oh, something already happened. We're so sorry to tell you that Alfred's in the hospital." In the original treatment or unused script, it was Barbara Gordon that got the firebomb explosion, and then at that point, she was hospitalized. But Alfred is also hospitalized in a different story point in the unused script. So, for anybody who wants to go and check it out, I'll post up the links, hopefully once the show's posted, and you can see the parallels between the two. And it's very, very simple to see where it all matches up, it all lines up. I'm not saying you have to go and watch the 3-hour movie again. Just watch the video that compiles everything together, and it shows how things fall into place. And this is something that happens quite often, where nowadays, if you meet somebody that's in Hollywood, somebody's always trying to sell their script or say, hey, can you read this? Can you check this out? Or can you get this in such and such as hands or in front of them so they can check it out? more often than not, people will say no. Because it's not that they don't want to read it. It's not that they don't think that you have a good script. It's that if for any reason they read that script and they say, it's great, but I can't use it right now. Sorry. Then 5, 10, who knows, 15 years later, they say, hey, I have this great idea. And for some reason, they regurgitate that script, even in partial beats.
Mm-hmm.
There's a potential case for you stealing that idea from the person who originally wrote it and gave it to you to read if you didn't make a deal with them. I know that the Matrix at one point had a big lawsuit with the Wachowskis, and I can't remember the individual that claims to have written it, but the script that was originally in question for that case included a lot of other different movies, not just the Matrix, but I think like Terminator and like 1 or 2 other films somehow were like incorporated in this weird, complicated, convoluted script that eventually, I believe, ended up getting settled out of court because there were a lot of similarities in that case. So, I think it was one of the Kevin Smith podcasts where Mark Bernardin had mentioned that he can't read anything. He himself is a writer, but he can't read anything handed to him because he could easily be accused of stealing somebody's idea if he then tries to make a story that's even remotely similar in nature. Because then they can say, oh, no, I handed that to you in a coffee house back in, New Jersey, and you read it, and you took a look at it, or you glanced at it, whatever the case was, and now you're stealing my idea. Pay me. It gets very, very weird. So let me go back to the original, or at the beginning of that story with New York Comic Con and where these two individuals met up, Mr. Wozniak and Mr. Uslan. The idea that he walked up to him and said, I'm a producer of movies, and I would like to check out your book because I use story ideas. I like to find story ideas and make them into movies. By saying that to Mr. Wozniak and then him exchanging a book for the business card, that was essentially soliciting a story idea. That right there is the beginning of the case. And then everything else, following as far as the story beats and everything else, that goes forward in that case. It's very interesting to see if that's actually what happened. I don't know. Like anything, you have to wait until everything is said and done. Again, Warner Brothers.
Question.
Sure. Go ahead.
What year Comic-Con does it specify this happened?
That's a very good question. Let's see. He was in 2008. He claimed that he sent a solicited screenplay treatment of one of his comic books scripts from the 90s to Michael Uslan. So
okay, that makes some sense because I was trying to run it through in my mind because if I remember correctly, the Batman was filmed in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to come out in 2020, and that was one of the many films that got shelved during the pandemic. And then it was like spring 2022 before they finally said, okay, we're putting this guy out now.
Yeah.
Because I remember that first teaser trailer came out in like January or February of 2020.
About that, yeah. Yeah, and this is, again, if you go through, he had contact, let's see, the other people that were named here. Archie Goodwin, chief editor in charge of the Batman office in 1990 for DC, or DC Warner Brothers at that point. Chris Batista, active DC Comics artist in 2017. And Dan, I always mess up this name, Didio, I can't remember, Didio, co-publisher of DC Comics in 2017. And a lot of the interactions that he has, and he's has screen captures of the conversations, show that there's interaction and interest as far as the story idea. And it went all the way up to 2017, those interactions. And then everything just went silent from there. Mm-hmm. Silent because somebody said at some point, hey, this might be a great idea. Now, I'm not saying like specifically somebody flat out said, hey, I have this great idea, I'm going to steal it from this guy. No, again, somebody probably, it changed hands probably, got read a few times around the office, and then somebody said, hey, this might be a good idea. And then from there, everything just started falling into place. And they were essentially taking this script and made a blockbuster movie. Now, let's face it, Batman movies, there are so many of them, and there will be more coming down the line. Nothing that I'm saying, like, no shocking news here. Batman and a lot of these comic book characters are timeless characters to the point where every 10 to 15 years, you'll get a new entry or a new reboot or a new franchise because they want to have a new, in this case, Batman for every generation. So for them to do a young Batman in this case, it was intended to relaunch the franchise and get it in front of younger eyes, and also for eyes of the old loyal fans, and say, hey, if you like Batman, maybe you'll like this version. So supposedly there's going to be a sequel to the movie. That's been talked about for quite some time. Who those villains are going to be, I know I heard Mr. Freeze and Clayface mentioned a couple times in different stories, but I don't know where they're going to go. And if they did take this idea from somebody else who they did not credit nor did they pay, I don't know what direction the next script's going to be. It's kind of weird sometimes when you change writers because you don't have the same feel. You don't have the same, again, story beats. And sometimes that goes a little off. Like in the case of James Gunn with the Guardians of the Galaxy, you watch all three of those movies, it's the same person behind each movie because all the story beats are the same. They have that rhythm to them.
Yeah.
But if you watch, let's say, the original Batman movies that we're all familiar with from the 90s, you watch Michael Keaton Batman, then you watch Val Kilmer Batman, then George Clooney Batman. They're all different. They all have different feels, different directors, different writers, obviously. So they don't have the same cohesion. But then if you watch the Christopher Nolan movies, those three movies, they were intended to be a trilogy, so they all have that rhythm.
Well, I don't think you can get much more of a jarring transition in terms of the Batman films than going from the dark, brooding atmosphere of Tim Burton to the whatever the fuck you'd call it of Joel Schumacher.
The neon Gotham.
Yeah, it's and I'll be the first to admit I still have a soft spot in my heart for Batman Forever, but holy crap, like I rewatched Batman and Robin some time ago and all I could think was, holy fuck. So it was even more ridiculous than it was, 26 years ago.
Supposedly there was, and this was rumored for quite some time because this was back when everybody was talking about the Snyder Cut. And then suddenly everybody's saying that, we want the Snyder Cut of every movie. So in particular, the, who was the gentleman who did the first Suicide Squad movie? Something Ayers, David Ayers, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so.
Apparently, if you want to follow that story, he had his cut, but the studio wanted to do a different cut. So they essentially put his cut and the studio's cut out for test screenings. And the studio cut, which was actually done by a third party who primarily does movie trailers. If you remember that one really popular Suicide Squad movie trailer that had all the popular music in it, that one got a big reaction. So Warner Brothers said, hey, let's ask these guys to do a cut of the movie and see how it turns out as far as test screening. Well, the test screening did better with the third-party cut. So David Ayer said, you know what? I just want the movie out, whatever shape it takes. Let's go for it. I'm a company man. I'll do it. Why not? That has led to a lot of people saying that, hey, the one that we got theatrically, it was fun and good and all, but if there's a David Ayers cut, why don't we get that one instead? And Ayers is like, look, if anybody wants to release it, I'm all for it. But at the same time, I did the job. I got paid. Movie's out. Enjoy it for what it is. So the whole Snyder Cut thing has been taken on a little bit, appropriated for other cuts as well. To which there is, again, going back to Kevin Smith, there is a Schumacher cut of Batman Forever.
Really?
And that one extends it to a little bit further as far as, like, I think closer to 3 hours at that point, if not more. I can't remember the exact running time. The funny thing about this one is a fan of Kevin's was able to give him a copy of that movie. Don't know how he got it. I'm sure there's a deeper story to that one. But now that Kevin Smith has his own movie theater down in the Atlantic Highlands, he has been holding secret screenings of it. So if you go to a Kevin Smith event where they're doing like watch a movie with Kevin and do a Q&A session after the fact, so you pretty much just discuss the movie itself. It's not a movie that Kevin Smith has done. It's just like maybe, let's say, The Flash or any other new movie that comes out. He'll hold a little event afterwards, so he just gets together with fans, and they'll just talk about what they had just watched. He had mentioned that certain events at his theater, if you hang around, maybe they might screen something. Hint, hint. Without saying specifically what it was. And a lot of people found out that, oh yeah, he's screening the Batman Forever Schumacher cut. So there's been at least one screening so far that I know of. I think there's another one in August. And he's mentioned a few times, like, hey, if you stick around, I'll show you something. It might last a little, forever. But who knows? So it's cool idea to see, like, there's these different cuts out there. And also cool to think that they're now getting to see the light of day in certain cases. Because oftentimes studio heads get in the way and like, oh, this is too long, or this is too dramatic, or this is too violent, whatever the case is. And they'll make cuts, sometimes for runtime, other times it's for the ratings board. And the director's vision or idea sometimes then gets edited and cut down to whatever is going to be released theatrically. So you miss out a few times. But in this case, would be one cut that I would love to see, because there's just, extended story beats for certain plots and different things. And he's talked about it online, especially what is included and what's, left, I guess you can say slightly changed. But truth be told, I also have a soft spot for Batman Forever as well, only because I would love to have seen further continuation of Val Kilmer as Batman, because I think he did a decent job. It's just that the material that he was handed, it was what it was. It wasn't Tim Burton.
As that era of Batman's goes, he was he played a good Batman, but he played an excellent Bruce Wayne.
Okay, I can see that. That's always the argument when it comes to those movies as well, is they can play one facet, but the other facet not so much.
And no, they always seem to excel in one and not the other. So, but that's always been my take. Except for Clooney, he was kind of at both of them, in my opinion.
Look, he apologized for that already.
He had the worst. Well, then again, he had the worst. Well, yeah. Let's be honest here. That killed the franchise for years, because they already had movies planned for '99 and 2001. If you go look them up, and you could see, like, they had stuff planned out to that, and they were just like, kill it. The franchise is dead at the moment.
You know what? After Batman and Robin, there was talk of another Batman movie. I don't know what it would have been called at that point, but the rumor going forward from Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy was that the next villain was going to be Scarecrow. And at the time, I remember hearing that Howard Stern was being offered the role of Scarecrow.
That's terrible.
So in a way, aren't you happy that George Clooney, quote unquote, killed the franchise for a short while?
Let's be honest here. If Batman and Robin had not killed the franchise, if they had done the next movie with George Clooney and Howard Stern, I have a feeling that would have been the death knell of it for a couple of years. Why do I have a bad feeling whoever came up with that idea saw the fucking goddamn Fartman skit from the 1992 MTV fucking Video Music Awards and was like, he could play a villain?
Exactly. That's all it takes is one producer that goes, oh, he's pretty funny, or he's pretty popular, and let's try to do that. Because when I watched the Private Parts movie, the Howard Stern movie, I'm thinking to myself, oh, like, this is going to lead to other roles and other projects for him. Let's see how long that lasts. And Howard Stern's career trajectory, that's a story in of itself. Used to be this shocking DJ. Now he's on America's Got Talent. So it's a very weird step by step as far as what he's done. But
well, he's also mellowed out because, God, he's well into his 60s at this point. He might even be 70. So he's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, there comes to a point in time where, like, no matter what you do, it's just not shocking anymore. And at this point, I think he's just more for the interviews that he's able to get with some of the celebrities and, people who come onto the show. But hey, I truth be told, I like the movie. I didn't like the overall story, I guess you can say. And when I tell friends, like, I'm not a big Howard Stern fan. I've listened to him back in the day, and I thought a lot of the things that he did were pretty amazing and trailblazing, to be honest. But when I say that I'm not a Howard Stern fan, like, oh my God, really? Like, everybody loves him. Like, no, not everybody.
No, I'm the same way. I'm a very mediocre fan of Stern's. Like, I've heard a couple of episodes of his that were okay, but a lot of the stuff, it just kind of deteriorates and it just gets dumb and tired after a while.
He found a formula early on that worked, whether that, that whole shock jock thing, was his main plan, or he just wanted to have fun on radio, whatever the case is. Early on, yeah, he was the bad boy of radio, I guess you can say, and it was fun to watch. But yeah, as he went on, all that bad boy persona kind of went away. But no, it's just to see what, and that happens for a lot of the different shows that I used to listen to on the radio. Whoever you want to, in my case particular, it was Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony. A lot of the stuff that they did was controversial, was shocking at the time, but after a while, it all kind of like dwindles away. So it's just like, if there was no real content there to begin with, then what were you listening to? Because if you were just listening to shock radio, then that has a short lifespan.
And no, at a certain point, there has to be, like, the shock does wear off after a while, and you do have to have some substance behind it. One of the more interesting comments or reflections I've heard on it was, I was listening to an interview with Gary Delabate, who's been working for Stern since sometime in, I think, the mid-'80s, doing his shtick on the show. And he even told the story that, like, when they made the big move, I think it was about close to 20 years ago now, when they went from terrestrial radio to Sirius XM, and all of a sudden they're like, the gloves are off. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. I think there were a couple of episodes where they're like, the kid in the candy store. It's like, oh, we could say fuck all we want. Fantastic. But then after that, it was like, all right, who cares? I mean, then you actually get the fact that Stern is actually pretty good at interviewing people when he drops the shock jock nonsense.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I mean,
that's where it stands out. Yeah.
It's funny. There was, was it David Letterman? I think so, yeah. On Netflix, they had a show, and my next guest, and he interviewed Howard Stern. And it's funny to see Howard Stern on the opposite side of an interview.
Yeah.
Because he's so insecure during the interview with that side of it that he almost tries to take over the interview and be the host himself.
Yeah.
But Letterman's been at it for so long himself that he knows exactly what to do, and he handles it well. It's just weird to see Howard Stern trying to be open, trying to be the one answering questions instead of asking them. At that point, it just, I don't know. It seems odd to go from all the crazy shenanigans. And granted, if anybody has ever watched Private Parts or read the book, a bunch of the stories I'm sure are exaggerated or hyped up for, either for the film or just for entertainment purposes as far as the book is concerned. Yes, a lot of the things did happen, but everything was just, amped up just to get more excitement out of it. You get a collection, like a best hits in that story or in that book, and it plays out well on screen. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. Back in the day, I remember watching that on TV going, oh, that's kind of fun, actually. It's a funny story and a great journey for somebody who just was struggling in radio and finally made it. But at the same time, it's just like, if you follow his trajectory from shock jock to potential scarecrow.
Yeah, that's a very weird one.
And like, I don't, there are so many villains in the Batman gallery that could be used, and none of them I would ever say Howard Stern would be great for that role. It seems really odd. So
that strikes me as nothing more than the natural progression of them saying, well, we need bigger and bigger stars to be in this. I mean, keep in mind, like, did raise a few eyebrows for Batman and Robin when, Schwarzenegger got billing over George Clooney because he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's like, but he's the villain, and shouldn't Batman have top billing in the movie called fucking Batman?
You would think so, yeah. No, that's the funny part. Yeah, whenever you go to IMDb and you check out the cast and you see Schwarzenegger in front of Clooney, it always makes me laugh. But I mean, that's Hollywood for you. If you have enough clout or if you have enough popularity, especially, that's the way it goes. And you're right, because how many different people popped up as far as Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I mean, I remember specifically in Batman and Robin, Coolio's cameo during the motorcycle race scene.
Coolio showed up in a lot. If you look up Coolio, he showed up a lot of. There were a lot of movies that Coolio showed up in for no fucking reason back in the 90s.
Coolio had a scene cut from a superhero movie. Do you remember which one?
No, I'm drawing a blank. Help me out here.
Ben Affleck's Daredevil.
Really?
There's a scene that's cut. If you have the DVD or whatever, access whatever online, it could probably find on YouTube nowadays. There were scenes where I believe Daredevil was like doing some investigations, and it led him to Coolio's character, and Coolio had some information regarding the Kingpin, and which ultimately it was cut for runtime because they said, okay, this really doesn't affect the story that much, so we can get rid of it. But yeah, he was included in that one as well. I don't know.
Well, he was in Batman and Robin. He was in Leprechaun in the Hood.
Oh yeah.
Which I actually just watched not too long ago, and holy penis, is that movie ridiculous. He was been in a bunch of like other like random, like he was one of those guys. He was just like, I think it's just one of those deals where it's like, yeah, if you're gonna pay me, I'll fucking show up and do whatever you want me to do. So
hey, why not?
Because I'm flipping through his filmography right here, and yeah, he worked a lot. So
what are some of the other ones he was in?
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to read stuff that's not like doesn't look like utter dreck. So he was in an Alan Smithy film, Burn Hollywood Burn. Why does that one stick out? Oh, it's a mockumentary about the joke of the name Alan Smithy for directors who disown a project.
Okay.
Yeah. Straight to video thing called Judgment Day. Straight to video thing called Midnight Mass. He was in The Convent with Adrienne Barbeau. Shriek If You Know What I Did Last Friday the 13th. What else do we got on here? That's pretty much it for the good, like, meat and potatoes of stuff. I mean, there's tons of straight-to-video stuff that I've never even heard of before, like Perfume, In Pursuit, Get Over It, Gangland, Stormwatch, The Beat, Rave Dactyl, Project Evolution, Stealing Candy, Red Water, Exposed, Tapped Out, Sex in the Studio Part 2, Four Fingers of the Trill, Stupidity, Move, A Wonderful Night in Split, Dracula 3000, Pterodactyl, and Gang Wars. And this goes on fucking forever. The only thing on here that probably anybody's fucking heard of is apparently they did a movie called Futurama, Bender's Big Score, and he played the voice of Kwanzaa-Bot.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Wow, he was around for a bit.
Yeah, and holy shit, and there's a whole section for all the fucking TV acting he did. Jesus Christ, he was fucking all over the place. Yeah. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Kenan and Kel, Duckman, The Nanny, VIP, Malcolm and Eddie, Arliss. He was on Fear Factor, Futurama, Charmed, Static Shock. Wow, he was a working dude. Huh. Oh, Coolio, rest in peace.
Yeah, those movie cameos will really pile up after a while, especially if somebody's just hanging around saying, hey, if you're willing to pay, I'm willing to show up.
Yeah, effectively, yeah. It's wild. It's wild that, and yeah, it's making me think of that. It's wild that Coolio is dead and Joel Schumacher is dead as well.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. And that's for anybody who says, oh, Joel Schumacher's version of Batman, oh god, that sucked. Joel Schumacher had a lot of good movies. One of specifically The Lost Boys.
Yep.
So it's not like you can judge him just based off of Batman Forever. I mean, Batman Forever is what it is. You either love it or hate it so much that you love it, whatever the case. It has its moments. For me, specifically the one moment that convinced me Val Kilmer as Batman.
Yeah.
Because everybody says the same thing. Like, oh, he did a great Bruce Wayne, but Batman was the one scene after Two-Face crashes the party, and when he tries following him through the trash chute or whatever the case was, and he lands in that one area underground, and they ignite it, and there's just fire all over him, and he covers himself in the cape and insulates himself. I know it sounds very, almost Adam West Batman-like, but the scene specifically where he jumps out of the fire and he's like staring down Two-Face and his gang, and he's got this glaring look, and the way the cowl sits, the way the shadows are playing off of the fire and everything, he just looks so menacing. I'm like, I want that Batman right there in that shot for the rest of this movie. Unfortunately,
I know exactly the shot you're talking about too, which is hilarious because I have not watched that movie in so long. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
it's so unfortunate that we do not get that Batman ever again.
Mm-hmm.
No, instead we get a Holy Rusted Metal Batman later on. Like, what? Oh, yeah. So
yeah, that was a little unfortunate.
It's weird, but just to wrap up this part of it, it's funny that story came out as far as BatmanGate, and it had legs for it for a little bit, and then it kind of like dwindled away. Even though there was like petition online and people, funding the lawsuit going against Warner Brothers, now Warner Brothers Discovery. It's interesting to see that it's still playing out, and it's not the first time involving Batman that a lawsuit's been strung out for a long time. There was also the lawsuit of Bill Finger's estate. For anybody who is not familiar with Bill Finger was one of the artists who helped Bob Kane create Batman back in the day. You wouldn't know it because everything since back then, up until I believe it was Batman v Superman, was the first time you had a credit saying Batman created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Bill Finger is long and gone. Bob Kane, for the longest time, took credit for everything Batman. And I believe it's his granddaughter, Athena Finger, who, was presented to her this information. And, there was a documentary on Hulu back in the day. I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately. But this one gentleman hunted down, like, oh, I heard these stories, and I don't know if it's true, but Bob Kane said he took credit for everything, but apparently he had other artists and writers that would help him develop stories and characters, and he would just keep their ideas, essentially. So Bill Finger is responsible for a lot of the Batman that we know and love today, as far as the comics are concerned, and eventually evolved into everything else in the Batman universe. A lot of the villains, a lot of the costumes. Bob Kane's original idea for the Batman was radically different, and thank God Bill Finger was involved. It changed that character and probably made it iconic for the ages. It's going to bother me. I need to figure this out. But yeah, at that point, I remember going to the movie theater because I'd watched the documentary back in the day when we were running the arcade. It was just one of those things that I'd put on in the background. And the documentary's fun. You get, a lot of history, a lot of background. And then when you meet Athena Finger, she's herself an aspiring artist, and she now makes appearances. But there was the story where Warner Brothers, once they caught wind of this, were trying to give her like a payout. Say, hey, we'll give you like $10,000. Just never mention this again, kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
And when that happens, like, no. We're going to go a little bit further with this, because this sounds very, very interesting as far as where this could go. And it essentially led to now whenever there's something animated, TV, or film, Bill Finger's credit is included now. And Athena Finger, I guess, being that she's the family or the estate, money goes there. So Warner Brothers is forced to pay out at that point. And they'll continue to pay out until there is no more of the Finger family left. And I cannot find this freaking... Don't you hate it when it's on the tip of your tongue? You're like, I know the name of it. I just can't find it.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel you.
Let's see here. Internet, don't fail me now.
The internet fails you.
It does. It happens all the time. Survey says, documentary about the uncredited co-creator of Batman, Bill Finger, is called Batman and Bill, was released back in 2017.
Ah, okay.
So if anybody wants to check that out, it's a fun little documentary. When I watched it at the time, I did not think that it would lead to anything as far as like changes as far as DC is concerned. But yeah, no, it changed a lot, and especially for the fans, because a lot of people knew Bill Finger's name. I remember hearing mention of it, at the very least, that Bob Kane did not create everything by himself. He had other, what they refer to as ghostwriters. So having a little pool of writers or artists working for you must be great, especially if you can come up with a character like Batman, especially the Rogues Gallery, and then from there have it become this iconic title and story being reinvented for every generation. But now here you go. Bill Finger is getting credited. Every time you see something, it's not just Bob Kane anymore. It's Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Same thing with Joe Siegel and Schuster, the gentleman who created Superman.
Okay.
For the longest time, their names were included on the comics and the films and everything else, but DC was not paying them what they should have gotten paid. And I believe it was Neil Adams, rest in peace, Neil Adams, great comic book artist, another gentleman involved in Batman. In fact, responsible for a lot of the look of Batman from the 70s and early 80s, the blue and gray costume Batman. Very, very iconic artwork. If you've seen Batman in that blue and gray costume from that time period, chances are it was probably Neil Adams who was behind it. He helped fight the legal battle to get the rights back for Schuster and Siegel. More specifically because at that point they were aging old men. And he goes, look, it's not like you have to take care of them lock, stock, and barrel. Just give them fucking health care for the very least. Like, take care of them somewhat. And
yeah.
The way the legal case played out for that one, they eventually, again, Warner Brothers had to say, all right, fuck, like, we're being bent over barrel here. Yes, these guys did create them. But like DC and Marvel back in the day, if you were hired for those companies and you created a character and you wrote a story, it no longer belonged to you. You were a freelancer, hired gun, so to speak. So whatever you created became part of DC or Marvel.
Okay.
That was the big debate and argument back when Image Comics arose with Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, Jim Lee. I'm blanking on I believe there was a fourth guy, where comic artists and writers were like, screw this. Why are we going to create characters and you're going to keep them? Like, it makes no sense. Jim Lee, especially, like some of the characters he made for X-Men and X-Force, he couldn't hold on to them. So he decided, okay, let's go with the rest of these guys. We'll go over to Image. We'll create our own books. We'll create our own characters, our own IP, and we keep them. The only problem with that is artists and deadlines, which unfortunately plagued Image Comics on the early goings because yes, you had a few books coming out and they had a few in the can, but once production caught up to them, like, it was kind of hard for them because they were not used to that schedule. They were used to having their, the structure of DC and Marvel where, yeah, they would submit scripts, they would submit story, whatever the case is, but then Marvel and DC would put them out in a timely fashion. I think Spawn didn't have so much trouble. Jim Lee's work did. Eric Larson was pretty consistent, and I really can't remember the other guy. Was it Liefeld? I can't remember specifically.
I'm so far out of my realm of knowledge here. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, dude.
More specifically, it's Spawn, Wildcats, Savage Dragon, and I want to say Liefeld had a book as well. And again, it's been so long since I've gone back to that history. It's kind of hard to keep it all together. But Image itself, it still exists today. It's been shaped and formed very, very differently. Spawn is the forefront character for Image, and I hats off to Todd McFarlane because not only did he keep making the book and keep that storyline progressing, which I tried keeping up with, and even I fell off after a while, but I tried going back to it. The book's still out there. It's still great. There is a Spawn movie in the works from Blumhouse Productions. They've been trying to get it off the ground for a few years now, and this is supposedly saying that it's very actively in development. We have to wait and see. It's going to be more gritty and horror based than the last outing that we had with Michael J. White, which was back in the 90s.
That was 1997.
Yes.
And, well, yeah, let's just keep in mind something for that one. At the end of the day, I mean, Michael J. White is a talented actor. I mean, we all know that, but God, that movie was a turd.
Was it good? Was it?
Michael J. White was good.
Oh, Michael J. was great. That was like his big role at the time. But it suffered from CGI that does not hold up. The story was kind of odd when you get down to it. I mean, if you're familiar with the character of Spawn, it follows the storyline pretty well from the books. But it just, the overall execution of the movie, I was like, all right, congrats to Todd McFarlane. His character's on the big screen. That's what a lot of these creators kind of strive for. It's not their number one goal, but I mean, I'm sure it's a very nice pat on the back when you say, hey, look, opening this summer, Spawn. But yeah, you're right. That first outing was like, and there's a reason why we really didn't have a follow-up to it for quite some time. But even the current script has been floundering in development for a bit now too.
The only thing out there with any redeeming qualities was that animated, the cartoon they did for HBO sometime in the late 90s. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a much more reasonable, whatchamacallit. It felt like a better adaptation of it. It really captured like some of the darker elements of it.
If by darker elements you mean the PG-13 Spawn that we got live action, as opposed to the rated R Spawn animated. Yeah.
Yeah, where he's like ramming fucking rebar through like fucking people's eyes and there's titties and fucking hyper violence. So yeah, I'd say yeah.
Yeah, while like Chapel's sleeping with a prostitute while lamenting the fact that he killed his best friend in Al Simmons. Yeah. It's a very, different adaptation, closer to the books especially. I think I only got to like the first 2 seasons of that one. I fell off after the 3rd season, which got a little more into like the supernatural, I heard.
Yeah, there was all kinds of things where they actually even introduced like a quote unquote angelic character that was supposed to get together and take down Spawn, but the two of them ended up getting together and fucking and yeah, there was some like they started getting like the weird. Well, it's not just hell in the mix, like, heaven's in the mix too for shit. And so it was like, it did kind of lose the narrative after a while, but it was pretty good. I have fond memories of it.
For anybody not familiar with Spawn, I'll just give you a quick recap. Al Simmons was like this elite soldier, did like a lot of wet work stuff, was called on for particular missions to take out unsavory characters, essentially gets betrayed by his handler, gets killed, but because of all the stuff that he's done in his life, gets sent to hell. Lamenting the fact that he's now in hell, Malbolgia, the Lord of Hell, gives him the opportunity to go back to Earth if he sells his soul and becomes his new spawn, or hell spawns, more specifically. He gets given this weird suit that has symbiotic properties, goes back to Earth, but he's essentially a corpse in this weird suit, and tries to remember who he is, tries to get back to his wife, only to find out that his best friend has married his wife in the year since he's been gone, and now this whole heaven and earth battle starts to unfold with him at the center of it. And the one thing that always I wanted to follow up on, I never did because I lost track of the storyline. In the first few issues of Spawn, there was a counter, and it dialed down with every issue, and apparently it was the power that every time Spawn used it depleted the power he was given by hell. Supposedly at one point in the storyline, the counter runs out. When the counter runs out, he's supposed to be depleted and he's pretty much useless. But they did something to overcome that in the comics, and I never got a chance to find out what it was specifically. And I always wondered if they would ever use that in the films, where like, you use your suit too much, and that's it, you're done. I think they even mentioned it with Cagliostro in the live action film, but you never got to see that depletion happen live action or in the animated for that matter. I don't know. Story points is stuck in my head.
Yeah, good memory.
There's so much in my head that is so useless. It's mind-boggling. I'll have like a random conversation either with friends or at work, and suddenly like things will pop out and they'll look at me like, how do you remember that? I'm like, I don't know. I stay up too late watching YouTube and using Google. Sorry. But that's, between Batman, Spawn, it's kind of interesting, especially when comic books, where it all comes out. It's kind of odd as far as like developing the character, who owns the character, what happens with the character going forward at that point. Again, a Batman for every generation is pretty much the goal of Warner Brothers, because they know it's a cash cow that they can reinvent every few years. It's the same reason why we have like a different Superman, different Spider-Man, but somehow we still have one Wolverine. I don't know.
Yeah, go figure. They won't let the poor guy retire at this point. He's been playing Wolverine for almost 25 goddamn years, so.
Ryan Reynolds won't let him give it up. Like, just one more time. To which, that movie's been getting more and more interesting. I know it's shut down now because the Actors Guild finally went on strike. But the implications of the story that have been leaked so far, if you look at the set photos that were released with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds as their respective characters, one of the shots as they're fighting, in the background you can see a 20th Century Studios logo, like off to the side, like in ruins almost.
Okay.
Further leading to the idea that this storyline might follow the storyline of Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, only that it's Deadpool kills the Fox X-Men universe. So there's talks about the X-Men finally being brought into the live action films in this iteration, so they might finally have their MCU introduction, because Deadpool 3 is part of the MCU at this point. The Fantastic Four is rumored to be there from the Fox movies. That would involve Chris Evans reprising his role as Johnny Storm, which would be kind of interesting. That
would be fucking weird. Yeah.
Another rumor, and if it's true, I would love to see this on screen, is you might have a returning Wanda Maximoff from Elizabeth Olsen taking on Famke Janssen's Jean Grey, and for them to have a battle on screen. That'd be kind of neat.
You know what? That would be pretty sweet, and that would almost make up for some of the failures we've had out of them in like past decades. Because at the end of the day, what you really want for some of the stuff is you just want like two like characters who have like similar powers that match up very well. You just want to see them duke it out and have like a really cool fight. I mean, it's not much to ask for.
I wonder if they're going to bring back, what's his name again? Oh gosh. Was it Vinnie Jones who played the Juggernaut in X-Men The Last Stand?
Yeah. Yep.
His weird version of it, and then bring back the CG version from Deadpool 2 and have those two duke it out. That'd be kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, that would finally make up for the colossal failure that was X3, X-Men, whatever the fuck that one was called.
I want to say that was The Last Stand. Because I believe... See, it's funny because they really didn't accent the titles early on. I think it was like X2 United or something like that. And then The Last Stand, which... Yeah, that... Oh, my God.
No, I think you're right. I think X3 is The Last Stand. And that one did so poorly it shit out for a while. Then they did the Wolverine Origins movie in 2009, and that sucked butt. Yeah, they didn't get back on track, in my opinion, until they did X-Men First Class in 2011.
Well, if we go back again, talking about directors and having certain rhythms, the first two X-Men movies were done by Bryan Singer. And then he was offered the chance to do Superman Returns for DC, which then he took that project, but Fox was not willing to wait for him to come back, so they switched gears and it went with Brett Ratner for X3. And that's what led to the pile of crap that X3 was. It had its moments, but ultimately just not what we were expecting, especially after the sacrifice of Jean Grey in Part 2 of X-Men, to which was going to be a lead into the Dark Phoenix story, but the way it was handled in X3 was just like, what the fuck was that? So,
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
But again, going back to Deadpool 3, I would love to see because again, everybody who's listening, if you haven't heard, Disney had bought out all the Fox Marvel characters, so they're back under the Disney Marvel umbrella. So now they can bring all these characters back. And now is, the whole thing of asking these actors to come back and reprising their roles from old movies that have been done. So we mentioned the X-Men. We mentioned Wanda Maximoff coming back. Fantastic Four, and supposedly Ben Affleck's Daredevil might be making a comeback. And it's been reported in numerous places that Jennifer Garner's Elektra will be showing up as well.
Well, you know what this means? What we need?
What's that?
We need a fight between Ben Affleck's Daredevil and the Daredevil from the TV show.
Charlie Cox's Daredevil?
Thank you very much. I was trying to remember the fucker's name. I was going to say Charlie Wilson, but he was a congressman from Texas who drank himself to death after helping to engineer the U.S. support of the Mujahideen during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan from 1980 to 1988. That's a different story.
I don't think Marvel adapted that one.
No. That's a whole nother Megillah, if you will.
But no,
at this point, let's just get weird and let's just, you know what? Fuck it. Who cares at this point? Just mix everything with everything else. Who gives a shit? Who cares? We could have all four Punishers running around fighting each other. Who fucking cares at this point? Let's get weird.
I would pay to see Dolph Lundgren's Punisher come back.
Hell yeah, man.
Just naked psychopath hanging out in the sewer.
Yeah, giving cheap whiskey to a fucking crazy bum so he can give him information about dumb shit. Yeah.
The bum who only quotes Shakespeare. Yeah, that'd be a fun version of it. How many Punishers have we had? We've had
Dolph Lundgren, Thomas Jane in the 2004 one. Sadly, Ray Stevenson passed away earlier this year. He was Punisher Warzone.
Yeah.
And John Bernthal as from the TV show from 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, the Marvel Netflix series.
Which is actually very good.
And they say he's coming back. So he will be involved in the new Daredevil Born Again Disney Plus series.
That's fun to see. Fantastic.
But yeah, if you get all four Punishers on screen, that'd be great. Well, I think in this case, he's, like you said, Ray Stevens, unfortunately, no longer with us. But the remaining Punishers, at the very least, would be a lot of fun.
Oh, that would be so ridiculous and such a blast. So, yeah.
I'm trying to think of other characters that have been used that we could see. They could always pit the younger versions of Magneto and Xavier against one another. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, why the hell not?
Bring them all in for little cameos, like 1 or 2 day shoots, whatever the case is. The only sad part is to find out that production got shut down because of the strike. And even before that, they were just sticking to the script. I know we talked about it before, where because of the writer's strike, they couldn't do anything, but they planned on going back and doing ADR later on for any rewrites or additional lines that they had to include for Deadpool or any commentary, whatever the case is. So it's one that's on the radar. I want to see what happens with it. I can't remember the exact release date for it, but if things get back up and running again, that's definitely one that I want to see come to completion, because Ryan Reynolds is just a big comic book geek. I mean, he had to go through the Wolverine Origins movie and survive that to finally get the damn movie made, but, you know.
And let's be honest, he damn near played like a fucked up version of fucking Deadpool in fucking Blade 3, if you think about it.
He really was, yes.
Yeah.
Because when he utters the word thunder cunt to, what was it? Oh gosh, what was her name? Was it Parker Posey who played the vampire?
Oh, bloody hell, I can't remember. I don't know. I watched that movie once 20 years ago, and now I really don't remember anything from it, to be perfectly honest with you.
I like the feel of the movie, but the overall storyline just made me. And then I was also Triple H making a big film appearance with his little vampire Pomeranian dog.
Oh, yeah.
God, why is that stuck in my head? Fuck! I wonder if there's a way to scrub my memory so I can forget things that I don't want to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. But we'll see what happens. And hopefully, everybody gets paid fairly and compensated for what they do. Not what's... Look, Hollywood's a dirty business, man. Anybody up top is trying to hold on to... trying to hold on to a larger piece of the pie. The ongoing stories for the strike have been coming out more and more. I know we've talked about it. I just don't want to kill that one every episode, even though I'm sure the update's going to be coming more and more. I don't know. We'll see what comes of those. The other thing that I wanted to mention today, because I completely forgot about this, and it was posted earlier today, and I don't know if it's coming. I don't think it's coming out this year, because if it comes out this year, I feel really bad for it.
Okay.
Do you remember mention of a Borderlands movie?
Yeah, that's been kicking around Hollywood for years now. Going back to the success of the 2012 one back, 2012. So yeah, this is nothing mind-boggling.
So there was a post that was done, I think it was earlier today. Let me see if I can look this one up real quick. Wow. I got you there. For anybody who's not familiar, the Borderlands game from Gearbox was very, very popular on, pretty much every platform that they released it on. Has irreverent humor, a lot of guns, loot and shoot, adventure. A lot of fun. And a lot of people enjoy the games. And then out of nowhere, they said, hey, it's going to become a blockbuster film. Or at least intended to be. And yes. Today, okay, it's not this year. It's for August 9th of 2024.
Okay.
No, shut up. I hate this thing. I keep forgetting to disable her. So let me just run down the list right now, because when I heard the story at first, I thought it was coming out this year, to which I was like, oh God, that's horrible. That's, with everything going on right now with the strikes, there's no real advertising because there's no talk shows. There's no, talking about it because actors and writers are on strike. So nobody, even the actors themselves, would not be able to talk about it if there was a panel. So I was happy to hear that it was coming out in 2024. I was like, okay, everybody forgot about it, but they're like, oh, hey, next year, remember this one in light of everything else that's happening. You have Ariana Greenblatt is Tiny Tina. Jamie Lee Curtis is Tannis. Let's see. Kate Blanchett is Lilith. Jack Black is going to be playing Claptrap. Kevin Hart is going to be playing himself, probably.
Yep. He doesn't really have any other characters.
Oh, look at this one. Gina Gershon is playing Moxie.
Ooh, I like that.
That's an interesting one. And a bunch of other characters listed as well, if you're familiar with the games. Florian Montanou is playing Krieg. Charles Babalola, I hope I'm saying this right. Babalola is playing Hammerlock. And a bunch of other characters included from the games. I don't know how you're going to take a game like Borderlands and turn it into an 1.5 to 2 hour long movie and have it be concise enough that you stay faithful to the storyline.
No, I'm not quite sure how they're going to pull that one off, but I mean, how much weirder can it be? I'm sure they'll come up with some type of narrative to build around. I mean, it can't be any worse than the fucking goddamn Twisted Metal movie that they're coming out with, and/or TV show. I can't remember which it is.
That is a TV show for Peacock streaming.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
And I'm looking forward to that one only because I was a big fan of the original 2 games of Twisted Metal. Then after that, it kind of got weird. But the one thing that I'm happy you mentioned that one, because the one thing that I did not realize was who was playing Sweet Tooth. Did you catch that one by chance?
The voice or the actual guy?
Both. Well, I should say, you can tell who the guy is because the voice is pretty familiar. But when I found out who was playing the physical representation of Sweet Tooth, I'm like, holy shit. AEW Ring of Honor wrestler Samoa Joe. Yes, sir. Which, when I went back to watch the trailer the second time, the one where it's what's his name, Anthony Mackie and Sweet Tooth in the, I guess the casino. I'm assuming it's Vegas. When he's running around and Sweet Tooth is acting all weird, I was like, all right, I know the voice. And then all of a sudden, my friend Dan is like, oh, did you know Samoa Joe's playing like the physical version of him? I'm like, oh shit. And then when I went back to watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see Samoa Joe's body.
Yeah,
he has a very specific body type that when he's walking around, you can point him out. But because of the costume, the mask and the overalls, kind of threw me off at first. But
yeah, but I'm pretty sure somebody else is doing the voice.
It's Will Arnett.
Okay,
Will Arnett,
I knew
who's
somebody else was in that. Yeah.
most specifically for anybody who watched the Lego Batman. He was very famous for that one. What was the show? The Jason Bateman, Arrested Development. He was also on that one as well. Sorry, again, it takes me a second now. But it seems like a very interesting story. Even includes Neve Campbell, apparently, which was an odd pick, being that I know that the recent Scream movie came out, and I think she might have done this because she couldn't come to terms with the runners of the Scream movie to get a good deal as far as pay. So if this turns out well, I don't know. I'll give it a shot. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the original games. I don't expect it to follow the tournament storyline that the games did, but apparently Anthony Mackie's character will be some type of delivery man running stuff from point to point in different territories, and he's only listed as John Doe, but he drives the car of Roadkill. So
cool.
What other cars they include? Supposedly Outlaws included as well. Obviously we saw Sweet Tooth. Can I get an inclination of anybody else here? I don't see ones specifically, but Raven. So what was Raven? Raven was, oh gosh, was that the hearse I'm trying to think of? No, that was a different version of it. I think that was Twisted Metal Black.
I can't remember. I haven't played any of those games in over 20 years.
For anybody who ever played those games, let me give you a quick rundown. The Twisted Metal tournament, you have your car, specifically, Mr. Grimm, Outlaw, I think Hammerhead was one of them later on. Who was it? Axel, who was just two large wheels and guns. You're involved in this tournament. Something happened to you in some weird storyline, but the idea is that Calypso runs the tournament, and if you win, you get the one wish that you want. He can grant it because he's got some weird mystical powers. The twist of the whole thing is that if you win, sure, you wish whatever you want, but Calypso always turns the wish around on you, and it turns out all fucked up and not what you would expect. The first two games were great. I believe Incognito was the studio that did those back in the day. 3, 4, and on were 989 Studios, and they sucked. I think 3 or 4, they had like Rob Zombie music to it, which, was great, but at the same time, that was right around the time that Rob Zombie was being overplayed. So take that for what it's worth. Finally, when it came to PlayStation 2, they went back, and the same guys who were Incognito, Game Studio, which closed, was renamed something else. I can't remember. Oh, no, excuse me. Single Track was the original Game Studio. Incognito was the new version of that studio. They made Twisted Metal Black, which had a darker tone to the whole storyline, and they got the Rolling Stones Paint It Black music for the game, which is kind of cool. And it was just more crazy, fucked up shit. Calypso had a makeover and was like this weird shaved head, scar in his face, weird shit. But the stories got darker and very much grittier. But it's just car combat. That's all it is. Was like the pioneer of it for the PlayStation 2. Past Twisted Metal Black, the games had a few other outings, but nothing really caught on ever again after that. So if you really want to get the experience, parts 1 and 2 are great. 1 has very stiff, clunky controls. 2 had very refined controls. And then Twisted Metal Black was just like the epitome of what it could be. And I played all those games. In fact, that was the reason I bought a PlayStation. Part of it was because when I read a review for Twisted Metal, I'm like, oh, I want to do car combat. Sure. But it's interesting to see, again, from that one. Hollywood's like, oh, what can we turn into a movie? Or what can we turn into a show? And they'll start digging through the bin of IP. Like, oh, this one looks pretty good. Twisted Metal, what's this? And again, it's probably not going to follow the storyline from the games, which is fine. I like Anthony Mackie. He's got great charisma on film, more specifically in the Marvel films that I've seen him in. And then there was the one Michael Bay movie, Pain and Gain, with Mark Wahlberg and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So, hey.
Awesome movie, by the way.
Crazy movie. But if he can pull off playing the right driver of Roadkill off of an IP based of a video game, sure, let's give it a shot. See what happens. I'm not going to say it's going to be top 10, but at the very least, it's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
No, we'll see what happens.
Yes.
How about you? Anything else going on around you?
Nope, just dealing with the burning sense of dread that I contend with constantly these days.
How's your summer? Have you gone anywhere, or you just been staying close to home?
I've been working too much, and I need to take a lot of time off.
Fucking do that, man. Come on, go have some fun.
I'm working on it, but I've just been so goddamn busy with work. I know I between now and oh, Jesus H. Christ. I have to take at least 2 weeks off between now and December 31st, and I probably should take an extra week off in addition to that, because then I have to take at least 2 weeks off by December 31st, and I have to take another 3 weeks off by April 30th, because my company's policy is whatever PTO you accumulate from the previous year, you have to burn it off by April 30th, or you lose it.
It's such a weird policy.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those deals where they just, because it's a company full of workaholics, I think that was their way of saying, we're not going to let you build up an obscene amount of PTO and then quit and have to get paid out for like months of time not used. So, yeah, that's my entire theory on it. Because I know at the previous place I worked at for 9-ish years, their rule was you could carry only a maximum of 160 hours. And yeah, because a lot of places, they have to carry that liability on their books, because technically if the company goes out of business or everyone quits, then you're on the hook for that money to the company.
Oh, yeah. I remember back when I went to school for electronics, and our professor, the last semester, just decided, well, they're going to be closing out the program. This is the last class that's going through. Fuck it, I'm out. See you later. He gave his notice before the semester started, left back to Japan, and apparently never took a sick day or vacation day while he was there. So all that back pay for that, he cashed out before he left.
Nice.
And when I heard that story, I'm like, because he was like there for like 10 plus years, something like that. So I'm like, that's a nice chunk of change to save up for that time and not take any time off. And then say, fuck it, I'm retired, I'm gone, see you later.
Absolutely.
But in that case, then I can understand the implementation of the rule saying, hey, use it by this time or you lose it. Because, again, like you said, they don't want to be on the hook for that much money. But we'll see.
Do you have any vacation trips or anything going on?
I mean, we didn't do much. I mean, my stuff was, we had a few family outings, nothing crazy. We're going to try to do some stuff on the weekends, but nothing big, let's put it that way. Like, everybody's been saying, oh, go to Disney, go have some fun, take the kids. And for as much as I want to, that's a pretty expensive trip, so we're going to make sure we save up and have enough in the bank for it. But meantime, going out to some arcades, going out to some carnivals. There's some other stuff coming up here and there, and we'll see what happens. But, yeah, just little things, little family get-togethers and adventures.
I did get to go to, I got to check out something called Bar Tari not too long ago.
Bar Tari?
Bar Tari.
Where was this?
This is in Scranton, Pennsylvania, of all places. It is basically somebody else's version of, you've heard of Barcade, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, this is somebody else's version of that. So it's the same format. It's a bar and a full bar along with a kitchen that does like pub fare and the like burgers and appetizers and stuff like that. And the place is pretty well stocked with video games. So you go in, you get yourself a drink, you go to the hold on, sorry, there we go. You go over to the bill changer, you cash in your singles or your fives, you take your coins, and then you walk around and you play video games while you drink.
Nice.
I was going to say, if there's anything that is more indicative of our generation and that time period, I've never seen it as such, because 30 years ago, we were saving up our quarters to go to the fucking arcade at the fucking mall. Yeah, and now we can go in with our credit cards, order a well-made cocktail, and go play fucking Galaga.
Yeah. Tried and true pastime, man. Always fun to do.
Yes, sir.
And there's something about getting together with friends in an arcade and just trying to put up a high score or like beat each other in like NBA Jam or something like that. It's just always fun.
It is pretty funny too because you throw a little alcohol into the mix of air hockey, and gets a little aggressive a little too quickly.
I like the one arcade in Somerville, Yestercade. They have the BYOB policy. So if you go on the weekend, late night, sometimes you have some people walking in with their drinks, and they're just, playing at the pool table or playing pinball and just having a good old time. And it's fun to see them enjoy themselves. I'm like, that kind of thing was always fun to do. And that's, again, for anybody who's been listening for a while, has always been one of my hopes is to run a place like that. We had an old school arcade going for a little bit, but we're hoping that maybe one day we can try to get back to that. I don't know about running the whole alcohol portion of it, though. I mean, granted, it would bring in money, but it just seems like you open yourself up to a whole slew of liability if you're not careful with that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, as soon as you do that, I mean, I'm not sure what the laws are regarding BYO. I'm sure it's nowhere near as stringent as selling the stuff, like needing a liquor license. But I mean, Jesus, also on that account, if nothing else, then you just have to deal with dumbass drunk motherfuckers who, at the very least, are probably going to spill their drinks on your fucking cabinets.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what upset me the most, actually. But well, we'll see what happens. Well, sir, as I'm looking over at the clock, I think we've done it for tonight. How do you feel?
Yep, I think we've put in a good shift here.
Well, for everybody, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez.
I'm Doug.
I love those pauses. Thank you for listening. We are the Rabblecast.